to be in such company, Jim. It was a grand time for comedy and television shows that period. The BBC had a comedy department, a whole floor, and you'd walk past all these titles on the doors of these infamous shows that were outrageous laughter coming from within and shouts and cursing going on when things weren't going right. But it was a great time. It was a great time for comedy.
And Michael, in terms of this character, Frank Spencer, he's so iconic. When you first got the script or approached by Raymond Allen for this role, what was the original writing? What was the original description of Frank Spencer written on a piece of paper? And obviously, you brought your own wonderfully ideas to it. But what was your sort of take on this Frank Spencer character when you first saw it?
I think remembering back, he was very obviously clumsy and things would go wrong all the time. Very like a Norman Wisdom character that you'd see in the films of that time, or Jerry Lewis, someone in American films, and I when I read there was something in Raymond Allen's writing that gave it to me a sensitivity. It had already been offered to Norman Wisdom and Ronnie Barker as well, and they both turned it down. They said no, so I was the last choice. And when I read it, I just I felt sorry for him. I didn't laugh. I felt sorry. I thought this is too silly. He's just losing at everything. And how can I make him real?
Hmm.
If I was to do it, how could I make him live? And I I was sitting at the lights, waiting for the lights in Clapham to change on a crossroad. And there was this woman with a pram uh, waiting by the lights. I don't think there was anything in the pram, just some shopping. But it was a big pram, and she had a son of about 19 or 20 standing next to her, just looking straight ahead and waiting to what his mother told him to do. He looked rather helpless. So the lights were red, and the lights were red for us. They were green for the crossing, and she stood there and waited. And when they went to stop, she crossed the road. And I just started to laugh because I thought she's waited and waited, and the lights have said go all the time, and she's completely misread it. And away she went. And people were hooting and hollering, and she just blandly walked across, didn't react to the crowd, didn't react to any drivers. And then they started hooting at me because I was sitting there not moving either and laughing. And I just thought, what a wonderful character. The mother was.
Yeah.
So I thought that son could be the character. That could be the character. That he's just one step behind everything. And it life is going to be very difficult for him. So when I spoke to Raymond, Raymond had a great simplicity in his writing. It was always Um, oh, I see. He had this accent that was like that. Right, right, Michael. Yes. And I go, in the end, we'd both be sitting there saying, yes, I was. And slowly this character developed in the writing stage, because I agreed to do it if I wanted to make him I wanted to marry him somehow. Let's get him married because this would make for a real relationship. You've
Yeah.
got to, otherwise it looks as though he's maybe too light, too,
Mm.
and so they agreed, and we got this wonderful actress, Michele Dotrice. I mean,
Mm.
without her, that again, it would never have worked without these sensitivities coming to the two characters, because they had to be real. And she was a really good classical actress, Michelle, until she met me, and I think I destroyed her career. But it was love at first sight when we interviewed girls, actresses for the part. And I met Michelle. She walked in the door, and we had a rapport immediately.
Mm.
And I think your listeners would understand this. You meet someone, and you immediately know you've got something in common. You've got a conversation, and it's easy. And that was what I had with her. So all these things adding together, we took with the producer Michael Mills. Uh, we put these together and very patiently put them together over months, and came up with what we felt was a really good beginning, and stuff we could work on for future episodes. And we took our chances, and the first episode went out and got a very favorable reaction.
Yeah.
So,
I'm wondering, Michael, as well, in terms of the sets that were used on some others who have them. I remember the famous the show with the house where he goes in and Frank destroys Betty's brother's sort of house. In terms of
yeah.
that, so much went on in terms of that episode, in terms of sets and sorts of stuff like that. Did you have a big budget or production to work with? And for that episode alone, I imagine it probably took maybe 3, 4 weeks to film, I imagine.
Well, as we grew, we got to about 3 episodes, and the viewing figures went through the roof. And so Bill Cotton, who was the head of BBC, was very looked at us very favorably and allowed us 2 days in the studio instead of the usual one, because you rehearse for 5 days, and on the sixth day you go in the studio for a rehearsal day with the cameras, and then you shoot it the next day. I'm sorry, you shoot it that evening. We went in on the sixth day for the cameras, and we had a day that we could rehearse the stunts
Mm.
that we did live in the studio, like falling down the sets of stairs.
Yeah.
He trips over the vacuum cleaner or something, and all the spirals come out of the banister, and the whole banister falls down, and he rolls from top to bottom in the studio live.
Mm.
That we could rehearse on the day before, so that on the night we would do it in one take in front of an audience and get the true reaction. And that was exciting. I mean, and it was revolutionary in the studio getting an extra day. So we had that advantage. Um, and again, the writing, we got more adventurous with our stunts when I mean, I was eager to use roller skating because I loved it as a child, and I was quite good at it. So we could make him a terrible roller skater trying to take the wife's godchildren down for down for a day out.
Mm.
And so we went to a skating rink, and then the famous skating sequence started. That we shot in about 2 or 3 days, which wasn't bad at all, because I was going between the front and back wheels of a lorry. We were coming down hills. We were coming down spiral stairs in a shopping mall, and going on the back of grabbing straight onto the back of a bus and being dragged along. So it was quite complicated, and we had a very good stunt team that would help and guide me. I had very good knee pads, and we had a terrific team of the backroom boys who would have to build all these things and make them breakable. So it made a very different show for them, and they were always very very keen on doing a good job.
Yeah. And Michael, it was it particularly in terms of some others who have them. We know particularly 3 seasons, 23 episodes, seven in season one, eight in season two, seven in season three. That was a thing of the time where episodes were normally 8 to 7 back in the sort of 70s because there was sort of so much going on. And was that really when you were doing a season on some others do have them? Was it maybe 6 months of the year, roughly, for one season?
Do you know, I can't remember that. I think the first two seasons went pretty much back to back. We were booked for either 6 or 7 the first season, and then there'd be a short break because they've got to be written, and they've got to have the localities for the shoot to be worked out, what's going to be needed outside and what's going to be needed in the studio. And so you work out a budget for outside broadcasting and a film unit. Um, all that we were allowed more. I'm sure because we went to such lengths. I mean, the car going over the cliff,
Yeah.
the prop people were they had to dig into the Dorset coast so that iron pilings would go down so we could make that car secure, the Morris Minor
Yeah.
secure, and put it on a lever that would balance evenly and be controlled by the prop men. So it was a giant job for them,
Mm.
and that would take a considerable amount of time and getting permission from the Dorset Council. You're going to dig into our cliffs, and they wouldn't be too keen in the first place. But as the program became more popular, more and more people wanted to help us. So it was we ended up having a long break after the first two series, and then came back. Sadly, Michael Mills had left, and he'd gone to over to ITV, and so we had a new producer, and so that was a whole different experience as well for someone to get used to us. And we filmed that all up and around Bedfordshire. So it was a bit further out than London, um, and it became we became a little more complicated in our stunts and our adventures, and in the end, I just felt I was going. I got too clever, and
Yeah.
I eased off on it, and I just thought, no, I think we've reached the end of the road with the character now, and I loved it. I loved playing him. I loved Frank, and still look back so fondly, and the fact that it's lasted this long, that it's still shown,
Yeah.
and grandchildren can watch it with their grandparents and roar with laughter gives me so much joy. People say, "Well, I hope you don't mind." I said, I should be so lucky, 40 years afterwards that it was 40, nearly 50 years ago that we did
Yeah.
it, and uh, and people still remember. I'm very blessed.
Yeah. And Michael, in terms of coming back in 2016 to for that special one-off episode, how did that? Was there a good lot of planning into that? Were you a bit cautious first of all in terms of doing it?
Yes, we were, but we. we had Bradley Wiggins, the Olympic cyclist and world champion. He was game to do whatever we wanted. So we worked up a thing where I'm chasing him around the velodrome in London on the skates, and I grab onto the back of his bike coming down at the end of a long chase. And we had Boris Johnson on a bike waiting at the lights while I was sitting on my bike, and I was I borrowed his helmet and rode off. Thank you, Doris. Thank you. Goodbye. And I called him Doris, and he was game. I mean, he was good. He was up for making a lot of money for Sport Relief, which we did. I think we
from the TV series, maybe a one-off film?
Do you know, not that I can remember. I'm sure it was discussed, but it's not something, if it was, it wouldn't be something that I would have done. I think it was something I was doing for a certain amount of time, and then I wanted to get back to the stage because the stage is where I've always been, well, most of my life and most of my career, and that's where I'm happiest. But I can't exclude being having the happiest time of my life with some others either.
Yeah.
And
And
Michelle,
Michael, yeah,
hmm, go on. I
yeah.
just that we were so happy. Michelle and I, who played Betty, we are
Mm.
still the greatest of friends, and we still chat once a week.
Michael, I'm sort of intrigued about a character and being sort of pigeonholed to the character. And I know John Cleese, for example, had to take himself to real places to play that Basil Fawlty character, which is so high pitched and high strung sometimes in terms of that. And in terms, and he was always sort of remembered as Basil Fawlty. Do you ever feel that sort of sense in terms of Frank's Spencer? Did you wear a badge of honor, or did you ever think to yourself, well, people are relating to me to Frank the whole time. Everything is all about Frank. Or did you ever think to yourself that you could be typecast to that
Oh,
character?
oh yes, yes. I mean, there's always that danger, and people will, as I said earlier, they'll still come up to me today, and say, "How's Betty?" But that's fine with me. I know I've got other things that I've been doing, and working on the stage is I don't know. It was an asset in many ways. We went and did Billy at
Mm.
Drury Lane and ran for 2 years, sold out for 2 years. So on the base of Billy Liar, a musical. So we had you use things if you can. You use the success that you've attained. But of course, there is that thing that you could be lasted forever. I mean, the biggest difference came when I did Phantom, and when I did Phantom of the Opera, it was so entirely different. And just I went and used my singing and my acting to its kind of fullest ability, I think.
Yeah. And what was it like producing a show in front of a live audience in terms of TV series? I remember talking to Arthur Bostrom, who played Officer Crabtree in Allo Allo, that famous TV series, and
Oh yeah.
he was telling me that in terms of the shooting live was first of all it was sort of a daunting with sort of comedy because everything has split seconds in terms of scenes and cut and interchange in terms of that. But after a while, with repetition, it becomes the sort of norm. Do you ever feel like that, or do you always feel like every night in front of a live audience was something different?
Oh, it always is. It always is. Every second of every day of our lives is different, and your anything can happen. So your concentration must be 100%, and to work comedy timing. All those people. Hello, hello was wonderful series. I mean, it was so funny. I'd still watch it and laugh my head off today, and it got clever and hardworking, but very talented actors in it. And So your timing is with that audience, that night, that moment.
Mm,
So it's different every night. An audience. I was thinking to myself this morning, when you go to somewhere like Washington
mm,
or Canberra in Australia, they're political towns, and the laughter is never as great when you're playing a city like that because they're not completely concentrating on what they've come to see. They're coming to concentrate on who else is there.
yeah.
And it's absolutely across the board that happens. I've found.
Yeah. And Michael, in terms of guest actors appearing on some others do have them. Obviously, yourself and Michele Dotrice were the sort of main sort of characters. Do you almost feel as at the time, obviously they were appearing and going, but as years passed by, did you almost feel a connection with some of the cast that played day players on some others do have, and did you run across a good lot of them again later on in your career?
Yes, I did. They were all very good name character actors and usually associated with drama. And so it was very different for them. And they all slotted in without exception. They slotted in to what they had to do. And the hardest thing we always found was to not laugh because it was so intense. And you're right up against someone's face. I mean, I beg your pardon? It's going right up against someone's face. You're saying this, and it's just hard not. It's hard for me not to start laughing, looking at their face because they're so cross with the character, and it. We had one guy, Jonathan Collins, who played the doctor in the birth sequence. He
Mm,
went to church the night before to say prayers to give him strength not to corpse, which is
yeah.
laughing. It gave him to give him the strength not to corpse, please God. And he didn't. He didn't laugh. He was good.
Yeah, and just looking, watching, it brings an awful laughter and smiles to your face, remembering it. In terms of the super glue episode, I imagine that was an awful lot of fun as well. In terms of the three or four actors that you were, the
Yeah.
sequences in terms of the hospital where you're all glued together. In terms of that, playing those sorts of sequences where you're practically not actually glued, but you're pretending to be.
Yes, that was really hard. Funny you should bring that up. That was a difficult episode to do because, for a start, the actress weighed something and you had to lift her up and carry her. And bless her heart, she was very patient because she was quite elderly, and had to be we had to be very careful with her and respectful and also be respectful to our own backs because you were rushing to get from one place to another, but you were apparently stuck to it. So that was extremely difficult. Yeah. Yes. I regretted having that written.
And Michael, even to this day, when you hear icon and classic sort of TV shows, and you hear some others do have them mentioned alongside keeping up appearances, One Foot in the Grave, as we mentioned, Faulty Towers, Porridge, some of the real iconic Are You Being Served, Hello, Hello, some of the
Yeah.
real classic British comedy, Only Fools and Horses, some great, great shows to be in that. Market with some of those shows that have standed the test of time. You're out there, and it almost feels like that you resonated in every household in British companies. Do you almost think to yourself that yourself, yes, we've produced something as good as Faulty Towers, as good as Porridge, as good as Only Fools and Horses, and obviously having a deep involvement in that, does it almost feel a great sense of pride?
Yes, I would think all the casts feel that way. All the leading actors and the actresses. I think we would all feel the same way. To be very proud when you think where you come into acting and where you start at the bottom of a ladder. In those days, there were no reality shows. You weren't chosen immediately to do something because you won a half-hour competition or an hour-long competition that ran for a few weeks. You trained for years in repertory theatre and travel around the country and earn £5 a week, and you were you were on trains on Sunday. You were always traveling. You were hardly ever at home. You didn't have Christmas at home. It was a hard but wonderful life because you loved doing what you were doing.
Yeah.
Anybody out there, anyone in your audience who loves their job knows what that means. And it's so special to love your work. And if you do, you'll put yourself through a great deal.
Mhm. And Michael Crawford, I believe you have some Irish connections.
I do, my darling late Nan. She was Edith Pike. She was Edith Murphy, and she married a Murphy from Dublin, and he sadly was killed in the First World War. And so I always call myself I'm half Irish. Of course, I'm not because it's my nan and not my mum. But I've got a great affinity with the Irish and the Irish humour. I love it and the Irish warmth and Guinness. I was used on an advert for Guinness
Yeah.
saying Barnum, Michael, genius. And they gave me a barrel of Guinness while I was doing the show Barnum in London.
Okay.
And oh, I have a great affinity with Ireland.
Yeah. Michael, last question before I let you leave, and this is probably a hard question. I'm going to try and get you to think about this in terms of an answer, and it's one of those ones that I try and leave to the last. Let's pretend there was some mothers do have them encyclopedia of the show, and they put all the characters down the show, and they came to the character Frank Spencer, and they contact you about producing this encyclopedia 20 years from now or something. And they said to you, Michael Crawford, having played the character Frank Spencer, in your own words, how would you write the synopsis to sum him up in terms of 2 to 3 lines in terms of the Frank Spencer?
I think childlike, innocent, naive, loving, caring, reckless, but devoted.
Devoted. Okay. Michael Crawford, an absolute pleasure talking to you on the airwaves this evening to relive your memories in our Into the Vault cult classic series of playing Frank Spencer in 23 episodes for 3 seasons between 1973 and 1978. For me, Jim Conlan, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. Michael Crawford, stay safe, take care, and God bless, sir.
God bless you, Jim. Thank you, and all your listeners.